Hi, this is Alison, DeNicola, and Beyond the Cards. I'm thrilled today. We have a new episode with the incredibly talented Matt Hughes. Welcome, Matt. I'm going to introduce him here. He's an accomplished fine artist, videographer, and designer. Matt Hughes has worn many hats in his 30-plus year career in the arts. Can't wait to hear about that. Love to hear about how people have made their way forward. In 2017, after spending 2 decades working in the corporate world, he and his wife, Hope, founded Ethereal Visions Publishing. This independent publishing company focuses on limited edition books, art decks, traditionally created artwork. And their book catalog of limited edition titles includes illustrated interpretations of Dracula, Frankenstein, the works of Edgar Allan Poe, and even Mozart's Requiem. Their art decks include the Dreamscape Oracle deck. We're going to talk about that today. The Ethereal Visions Tarot deck, the soon to be released Luna Tarot deck, and Matt's unique style of illustration bears heavy influences of the golden age of illustration and, of course, Art Nouveau. He says the roots of his unique artistic voice stem from other fine artists such as John Singer Sargent, Gabrielle von Max, Frederick Leighton, George Frederick Watts, Maxfield Parrish, and Norman Rockwell. And with exciting new products launching every 6 months, Matt has settled into his role as an artist, creative director, writer, and cat daddy. Welcome. Welcome, Matt. Thanks for joining me. Tell us first who your cat is. Is it one cat, or do you have multiple?
No,
cats?
we've gone the crazy route. We have 5 cats.
Oh wow!
Yeah, they're all indoors. Yes.
And do we cat names?
We have Loki, which is from Norse mythology. Then we have Mina, which is my little girl. Then we have Kyle. Then we have Chester, who is your typical black cat. And then we have Stormy, who is our resident little lump of love that loves to lay on the couch with you every night.
Oh wow, I love it. 5 cats. That's awesome. Yeah. That's a cat tribe, right?
Yes. We're very outnumbered.
Yeah. So it's amazing, Matt, because when I set about to talk to you, and I was thinking about talking to you about Ethereal Visions and your upcoming products, and I looked back and you said that you had come from a corporate background. I wondered if you have been doing your art all along. So tell us how how that happened for you, because so many people are in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started in the path for doing graphic design, but I always wanted to do fine art. The reason why I went into the path of graphic design is because I wanted to pay my bills. So I have a heavy education background in fine arts, and the graphic design was more of to keep the lights on. And then as I started working, I started working in my fields in the late 90s. It just went into the direction of corporate, and I ended up working. I did some stuff for Turner at one point, but I've gone from working for a children's toy company to a T-shirt company to a web design company, design websites, and then went into the health field and started working for like the larger companies like Kleenex and Scott Towels and companies like that. And from there, it just, once you go down that road, you start really focusing on your day job, but then you have to kind of squeak time out to work on your illustrations. So it really was a trial by fire kind of situation where, okay, if you really want to do fine art, you're going to have to find the time. Sitting there and going, I wish I didn't have my 9 to 5 because then I could do my art. Well, you have to find the time. So I would get up, 5 o'clock a.m. in the morning, work for 2 hours, and then rush around and get to work, come back home, and then work some more. So in a week's time, I was getting maybe 15 hours in on the fine art side of it. It's just something you have to do. I like to say that, like, a lot of times, especially when you're in a design field, they're 9 times out of 10 your coworkers did or are doing some sort of fine art as well. And they're always, I used to paint, or I used to do watercolor, or I used to have the time to do this, and life got in the way or what have you. And just for me, it's always been the day job corporate was always to pay the bills. And it was always a means to an end that I wanted to go into some sort of fine art. I wanted to illustrate full time. I wanted to be able to do that, but I didn't have the means to do it. I couldn't just throw my hands up and say, I'm going to quit my job and just focus on art, because, that's not going to last very long.
I think so many people relate to that, right? We all may have a dream, a creative dream or something, not only, art, but writing or, any of the arts. And creative process requires time, it requires space. You can't have creative inspiration if you're running on the treadmill 9 to 5. I mean, that's how I've experienced it. So what changed for you? What was the turning point, or what was the change point that you were able to, carve out more time or switch over or start up your business?
So I like to think of it that the time that I spent in corporate and doing the 9 to 5, it got me, it refined me and my work process a lot more. So I got to the point where I was able to, like I said, if I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I would already have the coffee in the coffee maker, and all I had to do was turn it on, get a cup of coffee, go upstairs, go straight to the drawing table and start working on whatever illustration I was working on. But over the years of doing that, I got to the point where if I sat down and did a project, I could focus on that project. It's kind of like in the day job. If you go to a meeting, you're focused on that what you're talking about, and then you leave, you have your to-do list, and you're able to focus on that for the week. I still do to-do lists. I have a weekly planner now that I put down every project I'm working on. And you can ask my wife. I get to the point where on Wednesday afternoon, I put down, I wanted to finish this illustration so I can move on to the next one. If it rolls around at 6 o'clock and I haven't finished that illustration, I start freaking out. I'm like, I feel like I'm not doing my job. I need to get that done. No one's going to come behind me and say, you should have got that done. It's me doing it to myself, but it's that work ethic that has just developed. But the thing that really kicked us into doing our own company was in the world of corporate. As there's mergers, they split businesses up, departments are created. So my department was cut. So it was, we had just bought a new home, moved into our second house, brand new house. We're all excited about it. 2 weeks later, I get called into the boss's office for the talk, and it was okay. I didn't freak out about it. It wasn't my first rodeo. It wasn't the first time I had been laid off, but it was one of those times where, I'm kind of sick of this now. I'm kind of sick of the, do I go get yet another position with someone and do that whole, work for them, and hopefully, they'll give me some sort of percentage of it in some way. So it was a tough first year. It was really tough because it was liquidating the 401k. It was, selling things that we didn't need and cutting and budgeting and stuff. But it was, hit the ground running. Luckily, Hope was totally on board with it. In fact, it was her idea. I came home and told her what had happened. First thing she said is, let's just go for, the publishing business 100% and see how we can do it, because I could always go get a job. If you take a couple of months off, take a year off, whatever, I can still go get a job. So let's give it a try. So that's what we did.
Awesome. It's a leap of faith, right? So, yes. And I think for so many people that there has to be some push to, for all of us really, to make us move through that. So now you're looking back in hindsight. So that's 5 years. It's almost about 5 years ago. And Ethereal Visions was your first tarot deck, right?
Yeah.
And tell me about, so I know that you were, you have some other items that you publish, different kinds of books and things like that. What led you to create a tarot deck, and how did that process unfold for you?
So the tarot deck, so before the tarot deck, when we, and to go back what I was saying about the day job was to pay the bills, but I was always focusing on the art. I was doing art the entire time. But for some reason at that point, I felt like getting into the comic book industry was going to be my way in. So we started hitting the conventions really hard. So we did, Comic-Con and all that. We were doing the whole circuit every year. So it was fine at first to kind of get the exposure, get your name out there, but that no vacation days. Your vacation days are at a booth. There's no savings because you're at these booths, and you're bringing product to the show. You're hoping to break even, and it was tough. But up before that point, I had a artist book collection of my work published. So I started getting a lot of exposure that way. A lot of people contacted me, and then just the suggestions of why don't you do some other stuff? Why don't you do it was never a tarot deck. It was more some other book illustration. Do this, do that, and then my wife Hope started showing me tarot decks that she had, and she's like, you should do tarot decks. And at first I'm like 78 illustrations. Forget that. That'd take me forever. Because I still got a day job this time. I'm like, that would take forever. But then we started, I started thinking about it more and more, and she kept bringing it up and showing me these decks that she had. And I'm thinking, well, I mean, I could do that. I could do a deck if I spaced it out enough. And that was actually that was our introduction to Kickstarter, the campaign to get it going, just to get the funds to do it. And that's when I started doing the 5 a.m. in the morning, trying to get work done, and then coming home at night, working on it. I mean, if I'm working at 5 o'clock in the morning, I come home, eat dinner, start working again. I would work until 1 and 2 in the morning. I mean, it was, and I did that for a year to actually get the deck done. So it was definitely it was the labor of love, but it was definitely her suggestion, her educating me on tarot decks and what was out there on the industry and how they were even used. I didn't know anything about tarot decks. The only thing I liked about it was that it seemed like it had a good foundation in like a symbolism type feel to it, which I was very much into symbolism and that type of artwork. So I immediately started, kind of being interested in it. And I think it took her, 6 months of convincing me. I finally started doing something. I think I did the first part I did was the moon card from the deck. And I did that, and I just kind of put it out there just to see, what kind of response I got. And everyone was positive feedback. So I decided I'd give it a try.
Go Hope. I'm so glad she convinced you. I mean, one of the questions I always have for people, and most artists are not readers. Most artists are not readers, and I have to acknowledge that as a US Games person and as a content creator myself and as a writer. But there is something that we have to go through when we're creating any kind of creative avenue and creating this art, is that I'm curious if you went through this at all, is that we kind of have to live through each of those archetypes as we're creating them, or kind of have an understanding of what they are. And so that's that whole system of yoga. So I'm curious, like, did that happen for you? Did you kind of have to live through each of the cards, or at least experience some of the energy of each of these cards while you were creating it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we contacted 2 people to kind of help us they're more tarot experts. And I would kind of bounce ideas off of them. That's one of the reasons why I went the Rider-Waite approach, because I knew that there's a rich history to tarot. There's people that know far more than I will ever know. I mean, it's something that a lot of people, they live it. So the worst thing I could do is just go in there and just start, flailing about doing illustrations and then throwing, the Empress name on it. This is the Hangman. If it didn't have that connection to where it's kind of a conversation, I wanted to meet someone halfway in a conversation to where they kind of knew where they were coming from, but they also could understand where I was coming from, and vice versa, because I was relying on these pre-existing kind of meanings and symbols. So as I would do these cards, I would break down or have them break down for me, just a couple paragraphs to describe what the card was, how it was used. And I would use that not to become an expert at it, but just to kind of get a better understanding of, okay, I definitely need to have these elements in it, but then I can add my own. I can add, this does make sense, and certain types of colors and flowers and any kind of symbolism that I would pull from Art Nouveau. I wanted to put that in the cards. I would make sure to bounce it off of them to make, I just to make sure it made sense. It didn't feel forced. So as I went through the cards, that's one reason why I saved, because it's an 80 card deck. So there's 2 extra cards at the end of it, which is the Artist and the Well. Those are the 2 cards in there that were completely ones I created, because I waited to the end to do those last 2 cards because I wanted, after halfway through it, 6 months into this, and I'm doing, like I said, this crazy schedule, and I'm really, trying to get it done and focusing on it. I felt like it was like I was giving birth to this thing. It was a painful experience that hopefully was going to have this good outcome. And then when I did those last 2 cards, they were supposed to represent, the well was the creativity, that source that I was trying to tap into to kind of get the creative juices flowing every morning at 5 o'clock. But then the artist was supposed to be me looking back at everything that I had done and everything I'd gone through with the deck. And I'm naked in the card because I'm exposed. I'm presenting this card to the world. I literally am naked to the viewer because here's everything that I went through for a year. So it was definitely an experience. It's one of those ones where you go through it and you're like, okay, it's kind of like we've done a marathon. I'll probably never do another marathon again, but at least I can say I did a marathon.
Here's the I have the image. I actually pulled those out, the artists. So 2 more archetypes that are uniquely Matt's here and the Well. Sorry, my camera, I'm a little close there. But I love that about the deck because it gives it your unique signature. And I have to say that this deck is incredibly popular and sits in our #2 ranking pretty much every month, right behind Rider-Waite. So you have literally the best-selling behind Rider-Waite deck for US games for the past, I'm going to say, at least 24 months or more. Wow. Probably more than that. So just to let you know that it's pretty much on every order. Pretty much on every order that I see that goes out of our warehouse, Ethereal Visions is on that order. So people are, it's still gaining. It's, and people are still getting to know it. And I've actually seen it on a lot of different platforms, people who read on YouTube and on different places using the deck. So I'm always excited when I see that, I can see the flash of the gold. The cards are so beautiful. So, and I'm sure many of you who will be watching this or listening to this know exactly what I'm talking about and already are familiar. And if you're not, you gotta get this card deck because it's pretty amazing. So congratulations. So beautiful and awesome. And so another pleasure of mine is to say that this summer we have your Oracle deck, which just arrived about 4 weeks ago, the Dreamscape Oracle. And so tell us about that, because it's got a definitely different flavor. It's an Oracle, and I did look through it. I'm curious to understand or to hear about how you came up with the different symbols that you are using in this deck.
So the Dreamscape Oracle, it was something that it kind of spawned off of the Terror deck because I still had that kind of mindset of the card designs and that style of card. So I worked on it a little bit, but then life kind of got in the way. There was, you start doing a lot more. Like I said, I just got done doing a year of, 5 a.m. to 2 a.m. kind of thing. So I kind of needed a break. So I took a little bit of a break from it, and things got in the way. So that's why it was strung across a couple of years to kind of get to the point where, okay, now I want to revisit this deck. But that deck was one of the first things that I did when we started the company, because I was like, okay, now I'm going to focus on this project. I'm finally going to get this project done, because I had done some of the book illustrations before then, like the Edgar Allan Poe book. I think I had just gotten done with that. And I wanted to go back and to kind of revisit this one. And it was partly because it was what you're saying, is like the response for this Ethereal Visions deck was so positive that it kind of gave me the inspiration, the motivation to go back in there and kind of, you know, revisit that style. And I like the idea of it because it really was kind of an archetype-ish project where I could, you know, sky's the limit. This is not, you know, when I first started out, I had training wheels on, and I could take the training wheels off and I could really focus on this Oracle deck. And I did like the idea that the Oracle decks are a little bit more open to interpretation. But one of the things that both me and Hope kind of, you know, right from the beginning, is that we wanted this deck to work directly with the Ethereal Visions deck. So the idea was that they could work together. So the designs are similar. The foiling was supposed to be, you know, very similar in the look and feel, card stock, everything, even the background color of the cards. So when you're doing a reading, it all just kind of flows together. So that was the idea of it.
Yeah, and it really works beautifully. I love, I actually went through I had to pull out my favorite card because I love the animal messengers, but I love your owl. And there's more than one of my favorites in here, but I could absolutely see how you could blend this together if you were reading cards, and it might even spark some other inspiration when you blend these different images, because there's some shamanic images in here. You'll have a lot of animals, and then different kinds of archetypes that are not in the tarot, and messengers that come through. And so I think it's a great companion deck, and so beautiful too. So it's right there, and people are really excited about it. And I do think, and I'm sure this was your idea, but I really do think that the foil and having the foil stamping on the cards is really, it just brings a different dimension to the to the paper and to the images and that kind of a thing. Is that something that you envisioned right from the beginning, using having the stamping, the foil?
So with the Ethereal Visions, that was one of the things that I wanted to incorporate, was a foil. Just because I was coming from the idea of the style of it was going to be very Art Nouveau, and as you know, they did that quite a bit. And when we started looking into the decks, I couldn't find any decks out there that had the foil, because I wanted to compare it and see if anyone's doing it. So immediately I was like, so is it that no one's done it because it's done, or is no one's done it because it's cost too much? I mean, what is the issue? So put my creative director hat on. I started looking into getting quotes from companies and looking around, and it was funny that there's quite a few companies that told me they just wouldn't do it. They couldn't do the foil. It was too much of an issue, and they had different options, that we could do, almost like a metallic paper, cardstock, that kind of thing. And it's like, no, there's a reason why I want the foils, because it has that kind of look to it. And then we finally were able to make that happen. And even that was a bit of a process of going back and forth and tweaking the designs. There'd be bleed, and some areas would be too fine detail for the foil to work. Right now, you go fast forward to 2021, foil is very common. I mean, it's like that's kind of like the thing, is everyone wants to throw the foil in there, which is cool. But to me, it's like, I try to think of it as, treat the foil as something like, a glow in the dark ink. Would you throw a glow in the dark ink on everything just to say, hey, I've got glow in the dark ink on it? So you have to treat it as its own element of the design. So that's one of the reasons why with both decks, I wanted to incorporate the foil, but I want it to be like, for each card, I want the foil to be unique. I want the foil to, kind of help enhance the composition, help enhance the characters. Just like the project that we're getting ready to work, and I'm working on now, we're doing a foil, but we're trying to decide if we want to do a green foil or a red foil, and like for the Oracle deck, we did a little bit of a different foil, and for Luna is going to have like a silver foil. I mean, you have to when you do that, you have to make sure that the color palette works for it, that the design works for it, and it's not just a, a flashy little gimmicky type thing. It has to be part of the design.
And so it's really awesome that you are also a graphic designer, because not all artists are, and that you have, you have like that skill set too, to be thinking about, the way things are printed or reproduced, or so it's awesome.
Our printers love getting on the phone with us for brainstorming calls, because they tell me that, they're like, we love working with you because you come up with the most ridiculous things, and we have to tell you, no, that doesn't work, or yeah, you can do a scratch and sniff card, that kind of thing. It's like, you start throwing out ideas. You're like, well, can we do this? Can we set it on fire? Can we make it look aged? Can we do some sort of illuminating thing? Can we do a music box? I mean, there's all kinds of ideas. But that's, I always try and push as much as I can, that as long as it kind of fills the project brief, I guess you'd say, to make sure that it does kind of work with it. That's part of the fun. So something unique with it.
Do you want to give us a little hint about what's coming next, or what you're working on?
So we're working on, right now I'm working on a project called Mother Mort's Carnival of Souls. And it is what's unique about it is that we're working with a writer in Ireland who is doing a short story book for it, that is a young girl's journey through this carnival. And each person that she interacts with, or each act, or performer, is a card that's going to be in an accompanying deck that goes with it. And the idea is that each one of them is an archetype that she goes through, and by the end of it, not to ruin it, but by the end of it, everything is kind of revealed, and she realizes, and it has a dark feel to it. It's very dark. It's not, it's kind of macabre, I guess you'd say. It has that kind of Penny Dreadful feel to it.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about it for us is that, like I said before, we do books, illustrated books, and then we do cards. This time we're going to do an illustrated book with the cards. So it's going to be fun, so I'm thinking of it as taking the booklet, making it a little bit like a 5x7 type book, like an actual illustrated book.
Mm-hmm.
And I go through there and do my line drawings and my ink work that I normally do. But then we have a deck with, full foils, full illustration, very Dreamscape Oracle-ish kind of feel to it that marries with the book.
Awesome. That sounds great. I like that. I wanted to also ask you, which I've been asking all of the artists, authors, creators that I've had privilege to meet up with, if there's something about you that people don't readily know, or it might be a special hobby, a skill, a superpower, if you will, something that people might not know about you, just in general, that you would be willing to share.
But like most artists, I'm a musician as well. I love interacting with that world. As far as, I guess, I love growing roses, which is really cool. Try to get varieties of different, hard to find roses. I don't know. I never asked that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think those are two pretty good.
Yeah.
Growing roses, yeah, that's a pretty good skill.
Yeah.
Awesome. And you guys live in Georgia, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
You're living in Georgia. So is that the good climate there for rose growing?
So roses, they like the heat,
mm-hmm.
not more than me. So it seems to be pretty good right now. We've got we live in your standard neighborhood, so we've taken our little bit of backyard and removed all the grass and filled it with just plants. So we've got like a little walkway through it, and the flowering bushes here and crepe myrtles and everything is supposed to be like a little. It was definitely a COVID-19 lockdown mental break. Was to say, okay, if we can't leave the house, then let's make the backyard something that we can really enjoy. And we went a little crazy with it, but so yeah, I've got a lot of flowers out there, but there's different areas. I've got one spot that is not in shade. It's perfect for roses, good drainage, a little bit of a slope to it. It's perfect.
Awesome. Well, I hope you'll post a picture of that on your, put that up for us to
Yeah.
see.
There you go. Yeah. I have a lot of pictures, I just don't post them.
Yeah. Matt, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for giving me some time today. I love your art. I love the card decks. I'm really looking forward to seeing all of the creative things that you have coming forward. And I give you thanks, and we'll see you again beyond the cards.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me.